First contact and puzzlement. The Galactic Coalition had seen its fair share of newcomers over the millennia, but none quite like the humans. When Earth's first interstellar ships arrived at the Coalition's capital world of Xanthoria, the assembled alien diplomats couldn't help but gawk. The human vessels were enormous, easily twice the size of the largest Coalition cruisers, and seemed to be composed of countless identical modules. Ambassador Zixtal, a veteran Xanthorian diplomat, watched from the orbital greeting station as the lead human ship, the UNSS Endeavour, approached. His iridescent scales shimmered with a mix of excitement and apprehension. "They certainly don't believe in subtlety, do they?" remarked Krelax, his Valerian assistant, her tentacles curling in amusement. Zixtal flicked his tongue thoughtfully. "Size isn't everything, Krelax. Let's see what else they bring to the table." As the human delegation disembarked, led by Ambassador Sarah Chen, the aliens were struck by the diversity of Earth's representatives. Tall, short, different skin colors, various body types. It was a stark contrast to the uniformity seen in most Coalition species. The formal introductions went smoothly, with universal translators facilitating communication. It wasn't until the topic of trade and logistics came up that things took an interesting turn. "We're eager to establish trade routes with Coalition worlds," Ambassador Chen explained. "Our standardized container system allows for efficient transport and delivery of goods across vast distances." The alien diplomats exchanged puzzled glances. Krelax raised a tentacle. "Pardon me, Ambassador Chen, but what exactly do you mean by standardized container system?" Chen smiled, clearly anticipating the question. "Perhaps a demonstration would be helpful. Captain Reynolds, if you would." All eyes turned to the view screen as the UNSS Endeavour began to transform. What the aliens had assumed to be a solid hull suddenly separated into thousands of identical rectangular modules. These modules detached from the main structure, forming a cloud of boxes around the ship's core. Gasps and murmurs filled the room. Zixtal's scales flickered rapidly, a sign of intense surprise among his species. "Each of these containers," Chen continued, "is a standardized unit. They can hold anything from raw materials to finished products, from living quarters to sophisticated machinery. They're designed to be easily transferred between ships, planets, and stations." The implications began to dawn on the assembled diplomats. Krelax's tentacles waved excitedly. "So, you can reconfigure your ships on the fly. Adapt to different cargo needs instantly." Chen nodded. "Exactly. But it goes beyond that. These containers are the foundation of our entire logistical network. They've revolutionized how we build colonies, conduct trade, and even wage war if necessary." The mention of war caught Zixtal's attention. "You use these boxes in military operations?" "Indeed," Chen replied. "From mobile command centers to weapon platforms, our container system allows for rapid deployment and reconfiguration of military assets. But we hope to focus on its peaceful applications here in Coalition space." As the meeting progressed, the alien diplomats bombarded Chen with questions. How were the containers powered? How did they interface with different technologies? Could they be adapted for use by other species? Chen answered each query patiently, but it was clear that the full impact of this system was yet to be realized by the Coalition members. Later that evening, as Zixtal prepared his report for the Coalition Council, he found himself struggling to convey the potential significance of what he'd witnessed. "Krelax," he called to his assistant, "how would you summarize the human's container system in one sentence?" Krelax pondered for a moment, her tentacles swaying gently. "I'd say it's as if they've turned their entire civilization into a set of interlocking building blocks, infinitely adaptable and scalable." Zixtal nodded, his scales shimmering with approval. "Well put. I have a feeling this is going to change everything." As news of the human container system spread throughout Coalition space, reactions varied widely. Some saw it as a revolutionary step forward in galactic logistics. Others dismissed it as an overcomplicated solution to problems that didn't exist. The Treelocks, masters of miniaturization, scoffed at the bulky human designs. Why make everything so large? Their chief engineer complained. We can fit an entire city in something the size of your thumb. The Vargans, a species of silicon-based giants, found the human containers laughably small. How are we supposed to fit in these tiny boxes? Their representative grumbled. But as humans began establishing trade routes and colonies within coalition space, the true potential of their system became apparent. Planets that had been deemed too hostile or resource-poor for colonization suddenly became viable options. Human ships could deliver entire prefabricated cities, complete with power plants, hydroponic farms, and defensive systems, all neatly packed in standardized containers. Trade flourished as the efficiency of human logistics drove down costs and increased the speed of delivery. Coalition merchants who adopted the container system found themselves outcompeting their peers. Not everyone was thrilled with these developments. The Mercantile Guild of Orion's Belt, which had long held a monopoly on cross-sector shipping, saw its profits plummet as human traders entered the market. This is unfair competition. The guild's spokesperson protested at a coalition trade summit. The humans are disrupting centuries of established business practices. Ambassador Chen's response was diplomatic but firm. We're not here to disrupt, but to innovate. Our system is open for all to use and adapt. Instead of resisting change, I invite the guild to embrace it. Think of the possibilities if you combined your extensive trade networks with our logistical efficiency. As the summit concluded, Zixtel pulled Chen aside. Ambassador, I must admit, when you first arrived, I thought your containers were just an amusing novelty. But now I see they're reshaping our entire galactic economy. Chen smiled. That's just the beginning, Ambassador Zixtel. Wait until you see what we can do when we really start thinking outside the box. As if on cue, alarms blared throughout the station. The breathless aide rushed up to Zixtel. Sir, we're receiving reports of a massive fleet entering coalition space. It's the Krathi Empire. They're attacking our outer colonies. Chen's expression hardened. Ambassador Zixtel, it seems the galaxy is about to learn that our containers aren't just good for trade. If the coalition is willing, humanity stands ready to help defend against this threat. Zixtel looked at the human ambassador, a mix of gratitude and apprehension in his eyes. I have a feeling, Ambassador Chen, that the galaxy is about to witness yet another demonstration of human ingenuity, this time in warfare. As the station erupted into a flurry of activity, Chen tapped her communicator. UNSS Endeavor, this is Ambassador Chen. Initiate Protocol Pandora's Box. It's time to show the Coalition, and the Krathi, what humanity can really do. The first shots of an interstellar war had been fired, and humanity's containerized civilization was about to face its greatest test yet, the logistical revolution. In the months following humanity's dramatic entrance into the Galactic Coalition, the impact of their containerized logistics system rippled through every sector of interstellar society. What had initially been dismissed as an oversized novelty was rapidly proving to be a game-changer on a cosmic scale. Ambassador Sarah Chen found herself at the center of a whirlwind of diplomatic activity. Coalition species clamored for access to human container technology, while others sought to adapt it to their own unique physiologies and cultures. I never thought I'd see the day when the Treelocks would ask us for engineering advice, Chen remarked to her aide, Lieutenant Commander Jack Harper, as they prepared for yet another tech exchange meeting. Harper grinned. Well, when you can turn a barren rock into a thriving colony in less than a standard galactic month, people tend to take notice. Indeed, human colonization efforts were proceeding at a pace that left the rest of the coalition stunned. Worlds that had been written off as too hostile or resource-poor were being transformed into bustling outposts of civilization. On Novus Ta, a planet with crushing gravity and a corrosive atmosphere, a team led by Dr. Aisha Patel was overseeing the deployment of a city in a box. Containers rained down from orbit, unfolding into reinforced habitation domes, atmospheric processing plants, and gravitational field modulators. Containment field stable, Dr. Paddle reported, her voice tinny through the heavy-duty comm system. Atmosphere within tolerable parameters. We're green for Phase 2. Within hours, colonists began to emerge from their landing pods, marveling at the fully functional city that had sprung up around them. Among them was Glix, a Xanthorian xenobotanist who had volunteered for the mission. By the crystal spires of Xanthoria, Glix gasped, his scales shimmering in awe. When you said you could make this world livable, I didn't truly believe it. But this is nothing short of miraculous. Dr. Paddle smiled, her dark eyes twinkling behind her protective visor. No miracles here, Glix. Just good old human ingenuity and a lot of very clever boxes. As colonization efforts expanded, so too did trade. The standardization brought about by the container system led to an unprecedented boom in interstellar commerce. Goods that had once taken cycles to transport now moved between worlds in a matter of days. On the bustling trade hub of Omega Station, Krelax found herself overwhelmed by the sheer volume of traffic. Her tentacles waved frantically as she tried to direct the flow of containers between ships, warehouses, and merchants. I need 3 Class 4 containers of Terran coffee to Bay 17, Stat. She shouted over the din of machinery. And someone tell the Vargans that their oversized mineral shipment is blocking the main thoroughfare. Again. Amid the chaos, Krelax caught sight of a familiar face. Ambassador Zixtal strode through the docking bay, his scales a mix of blues and greens indicating both excitement and concern. Krelax, my dear, how are you managing this madhouse? Zixtal asked, deftly sidestepping a hovering container. Managing? Ha! Krelax laughed, a sound like bubbles popping. I'm barely keeping my tentacles above water. But I must admit it's exhilarating. The station hasn't seen this much activity in, well, ever. Zixtal nodded, his expression growing serious. Indeed, and it hasn't escaped the notice of certain interested parties. Krelax's tentacles stilled. The Krathi. Precisely. Our intelligence suggests they're not pleased with the shifting balance of power. This human container system has accelerated coalition expansion and strengthened our economy faster than anyone anticipated. The Krathi see it as a threat. Before Krelax could respond, alarms blared throughout the station. A harried-looking human officer rushed up to them, his face pale. Ambassador Zixtal, we've just received word. The Krathi have launched attacks on 3 coalition outposts in the Cygnus sector. They're using some kind of new weapon. Our standard defenses are useless against it. Zixtal's scales flickered rapidly, a sign of deep distress. Assemble the Coalition Council immediately, and get me Ambassador Chen. If we're going to survive this, we'll need every box and container humanity can spare. As the station erupted into frenzied activity, Krelax couldn't help but marvel at how quickly things had changed. In just a few short months, humanity's humble containers had revolutionized trade, colonization, and now, it seemed, they would play a crucial role in war. Across coalition space, military leaders scrambled to respond to the Krathi threat. Traditional warships were mobilized, but it quickly became clear that conventional tactics would not be enough. In a secure briefing room aboard the UNSS Endeavour, Ambassador Chen met with a joint human coalition military task force. Holographic displays showed the extent of the Krathi attacks and the devastating effectiveness of their new weapon. The Krathi have developed what we're calling a phase disruptor, General Zheng of the United Earth Defense Force explained. It bypasses standard shields and causes matter to, well, to put it simply, it causes matter to forget how to be matter. A ripple of unease passed through the assembled aliens. Ambassador Zixtal's scales had taken on a sickly gray hue. Is there no defense against such a weapon? Chen stepped forward, her face set in determined lines. We believe there is, but it's going to require some out-of-the-box thinking. Quite literally, in fact. She nodded to Dr. Patel, who had been recalled from Novus Ta for this emergency. The scientists tapped a few commands, and the holographic display shifted to show a new design. A massive cubic structure composed of thousands of interlocking containers. Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all designations, Dr. Petal began. Allow me to introduce Operation Infinite Box. We're going to build the biggest, most adaptable battle station the galaxy has ever seen, and we're going to do it right under the Krathi's noses. As Dr. Petal launched into the technical details of the plan, Chen caught Zixtal's eye. The Xanthorian ambassador looked both awed and terrified. "Ambassador Chen," Zixtal whispered, "when your people arrived with your containers, I never imagined. Are you certain this can work?" Chen's lips quirked in a small, determined smile. "Ambassador Zixtal, if there's one thing you should know about humans by now, it's this. Give us a box, and we'll find a way to think outside of it, even if that box is the size of a planet." As the briefing continued and plans were set in motion, one thing became clear to all present. The war that was coming would be unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, and at its heart would be humanity's greatest contribution to the cosmos, a simple idea that had revolutionized logistics and was now poised to reshape the very nature of interstellar conflict. The age of containerized warfare had begun. The outbreak of war. The Krathi attack came swiftly and without mercy. Across the Coalition's outer territories, worlds fell silent as the phase disruptors tore through defenses and reduced entire cities to swirling clouds of unraveled matter. The galaxy watched in horror as the seemingly unstoppable Krathi fleet carved a path of destruction towards the heart of Coalition space. Aboard the UNSS Endeavour, now serving as the mobile command center for the Coalition's defense efforts, Ambassador Sarah Chen stared at the holographic display of the front lines. Red indicators showing Krathi advances blinked ominously, creeping ever closer to the core worlds. "We're losing ground faster than we can evacuate civilians," General Zhang reported grimly. "The Krathi aren't even bothering to occupy territories. They're just erasing them." Chen's jaw tightened. "Then we need to accelerate the timetable for Operation Infinite Box. Dr. Patel, what's our status?" Dr. Aisha Patel, looking haggard after days of non-stop work, pulled up a new set of schematics. "We've managed to repurpose about 60% of our container fleet for the operation. The modular weapon systems are ready, but we're still working on the phase shift shielding. Without it, we're just as vulnerable as everything else to those disruptors. What about the Coalition species? Have any of them made breakthroughs we can use?" Chen asked, turning to Ambassador Zixtal. The Xanthorian scales were a muted gray, a sign of deep stress. "The Trilocs think they might have a way to miniaturize the containers without losing functionality, and the Vargans are working on reinforcing the structural integrity to withstand the spatial stresses of rapid reconfiguration." As they discussed the various contributions from Coalition members, alarms blared throughout the ship. Lieutenant Commander Harper burst onto the bridge, his face ashen. "We've lost contact with Novus Ta," he reported. "The Krathi hit it about an hour ago. It's just gone." A heavy silence fell over the command center. Novus Ta had been one of the first successful demonstrations of human colonization techniques in Coalition space. Its loss was more than strategic. It was deeply personal for many in the room. Chen closed her eyes for a moment, allowing herself a brief second of grief before snapping back into action. "We can't let this continue. We need to buy more time for Operation Infinite Box to be completed. Ideas, people. Now." It was Krelax, monitoring communications from Omega Station, who spoke up. What if we use the containers as a decoy? Make the Krathi think we're evacuating or repositioning when we're actually laying the groundwork for the operation." A spark of interest lit up in Dr. Patel's tired eyes. "We could load them with sensor jamming equipment. Make thousands of small, moving targets instead of a few big ones. It might slow down their advance." "Do it," Chen ordered. "And let's take it a step further. Harper, I want you to coordinate with coalition forces. We're going to turn our entire logistics network into one massive shell game. Keep the Krathi guessing where we'll pop up next." As the command center burst into action, implementing the new strategy, Zixtal pulled Chen aside. "Ambassador, I must admit, the speed at which your people adapt to new challenges is unsettling." "Impressive, but unsettling." Chen offered a grim smile. "When your homeworld is as chaotic and diverse as Earth, you learn to adapt quickly or you don't survive. Now we're applying that principle on a galactic scale." Over the next few weeks, the tide of war seemed to shift. The Krathi advance slowed as they found themselves chasing phantom fleets and striking at targets that vanished before their phase disruptors could lock on. Coalition news networks broadcast images of massive container convoys evacuating threatened worlds, but in reality, each container was a piece of the puzzle that would become humanity's ultimate answer to the Krathi threat. On a nondescript ice moon in a forgotten star system, far from the front lines, the true scale of Operation Infinite Box was taking shape. Dr. Petal stood on an observation deck, watching as millions of containers swarmed in complex patterns, gradually assembling into a structure larger than many planets. "It's beautiful, in a terrifying sort of way," Glix remarked, the Xenthorian xenobotanist having joined the project to help develop sustainable ecosystems within the massive structure. Patel nodded. "The math behind it is elegant. Each container is both an individual unit and part of a greater whole. It can function independently or as part of any system within the larger structure. In a way, it's a perfect representation of how the coalition itself should work." As they watched, a group of containers near the core of the structure began to glow with an eerie blue light. Patel's comm unit chirped urgently. "Patel here. What's happening?" "Doctor, we've done it," an excited voice replied. "The phase shift shielding is online and stable. We're ready to begin integrating it into the outer layers." A cheer went up from the observation deck. For the first time since the war began, there was a genuine sense of hope among the assembled beings. Back on the front lines, the Krathi were growing frustrated with their slowing advance. Supreme Commander Vexthal, a towering insectoid being with gleaming black carapace, raged at his subordinates. "How is it possible that we cannot corner these vermin?" He chittered angrily. "Our phase disruptors are unstoppable. Their worlds should be crumbling before us." A junior officer cautiously approached, mandibles clicking nervously. "Supreme Commander, we've detected an unusual concentration of energy readings in the Epsilon sector. It doesn't match any known coalition installation." Vexthal's compound eyes gleamed with malicious interest. "Finally, a real target. Prepare the fleet. We will crush whatever pitiful defense they're attempting to mount, and then nothing will stand between us and total victory." As the Krathi fleet changed course, heading for the hidden construction site of Operation Infinite Box, the trap was set. Humanity's greatest gamble was about to be put to the test. Aboard the UNSS Endeavour, now dwarfed by the massive structure it helped create, Ambassador Chen addressed a joint human coalition task force. "For months, we've been on the defensive, watching as worlds we swore to protect were wiped from existence. Today, that changes. Today, we show the Krathi and the galaxy what happens when humanity and the coalition truly work as one." She gestured to the view screen, where the completed form of Operation Infinite Box hung in space, a cubic planetoid composed of billions of interlocking containers, each one a potential weapon, shield, or survival system. "Welcome," Chen said, a fierce pride in her voice, "to Fortress Humanity. May it be the turning point in this war, and the foundation of a stronger, more united coalition for generations to come." As the assembled beings cheered, alerts blared throughout the structure. The Krathi fleet had been detected, approaching at maximum speed. Chen shared a look with Zixtal, Krelax, Dr. Patel, and the other key figures who had helped bring this moment to fruition. "Well, my friends," she said, her voice steady despite the gravity of the moment, "let's show them what our boxes can really do." As Fortress Humanity hummed to life, its systems powering up and its modular structure beginning to shift and reconfigure, the greatest battle in Coalition history was about to begin. The age of containerized warfare had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same. Operation Infinite Box. The Krathi fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel in a blaze of sickly green energy, their sleek, predatory ships arrayed in attack formation. At the center of their armada, Supreme Commander Vexthal's flagship pulsed with the barely contained power of its phase disruptors. As the Krathi approached, sensors aboard Fortress Humanity came alive, tracking every movement of the enemy fleet. Inside the command center, a tense silence fell over the assembled coalition leaders. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood at the main tactical display, her face illuminated by the holographic representation of the coming battle. "All stations, report status," she ordered, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "Phase shift shielding at 100% and holding," Dr. Paddle reported from her station, fingers dancing over holographic controls. "Modular weapon systems online and ready for reconfiguration." Lieutenant Commander Harper chimed in next, "Coalition fleet in position. All ships reporting ready, Ambassador." Chen nodded, then turned to Ambassador Zixtal. "It's time. Open a channel to the Krathi fleet." The main view screen flickered to life, revealing the insectoid visage of Supreme Commander Vexthal. His compound eyes seemed to gleam with anticipation. "So the Coalition reveals its last, pathetic defense," Vexthal chittered. "A oversized box. This is what you pin your hopes on." Chen stepped forward, her posture radiating determination. "Supreme Commander Vexthal, I am Ambassador Sarah Chen of Earth, representing the Galactic Coalition. We demand that you cease your aggression and withdraw from Coalition space immediately." Vexthal's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. "Demands? You are in no position to make demands, human. Your worlds have crumbled before us. This construct of yours will be no different." "Then you leave us no choice," Chen replied, her voice hard. "We will defend ourselves and the Coalition with every resource at our disposal." As the transmission cut off, Chen turned to her team. "All hands, battle stations, initiate Operation Infinite Box." Across the vast cubic structure of Fortress Humanity, billions of containers began to shift and reconfigure. What had appeared to be a solid, if unusual, space station suddenly came alive. Sections of the fortress separated, revealing massive energy weapons. Other areas transformed into swarms of smaller, agile fighter craft, each one a repurposed container. The Krathi fleet, momentarily taken aback by the transformation, quickly regrouped and pressed their attack. Phase disruptor beams lanced out, aimed at the heart of Fortress Humanity. But where previous targets had disintegrated under the Krathi onslaught, the fortress held. The phase shift shielding, distributed across millions of interconnected containers, absorbed and dispersed the energy of the attack. "Shields holding at 92%, Dr. Paddle reported, a note of triumph in her voice. "The distributed network is working. No single point of failure." Chen allowed herself a small smile. "Excellent. Now, let's show them what we can do. Harper, coordinate our fighter squadrons. Krelax, I want you on logistics. Keep our reconfiguration options flowing." The battle erupted in earnest, a dizzying display of tactical flexibility, unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Fortress Humanity continuously adapted to the Krathi attacks, sections reconfiguring to present smaller targets or combine into larger weapon platforms as needed. Coalition ships, emboldened by the success of the fortress, pressed their own attack. Upgraded with container-based modular systems, they proved far more resilient and adaptable than the Krathi had anticipated. Supreme Commander Vexthal watched in growing dismay as his fleet's advances were repeatedly thwarted. "Impossible," he hissed. "Concentrate all fire on their central core. It must have a weakness." But Fortress Humanity had no central core to target. Its distributed systems meant that damage to one area was quickly compensated for by the rest of the structure. As the battle raged on, The true genius of Operation Infinite Box became apparent. Not only was Fortress Humanity a formidable defensive structure, but it was also a mobile factory and repair yard. Damaged coalition ships could dock with the fortress, quickly receiving repairs and upgrades from its vast array of resources. Ambassador, Zixtal said, his scales shimmering with a mix of awe and hope, I believe we may actually win this. Chen nodded grimly. We're not out of the woods yet, but yes, I think we've got them on the back foot. Dr. Patel, what's the status of Project Pandora? Patel looked up from her station, eyes gleaming. Ready on your command, Ambassador. Do it. At Chen's word, a section of Fortress Humanity began to reconfigure into what appeared to be an enormous transmission array. Energy began to build, coalescing into a pulsing sphere of blue-white light. What is this? Vexthal demanded, as alarms blared across his flagship. What are they doing? Before anyone could respond, Fortress Humanity unleashed its secret weapon. A massive pulse of energy burst forth, washing over the Krathi fleet. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, one by one, the fearsome phase disruptors of the Krathi ships winked out. Direct hit, Patel shouted. The phase inverse pulse was successful. Their disruptors are offline. A cheer went up across the coalition forces. Without their superweapon, the Krathi fleet suddenly found itself outgunned and outmaneuvered. Chen's voice cut through the celebration. All ships pressed the advantage. Let's end this. What followed was less a battle and more a rout. Coalition forces, their morale soaring, tore into the suddenly vulnerable Krathi fleet. Vexthal's flagship, targeted by a swarm of container fighters, erupted in a series of explosions. As the remnants of the once mighty Krathi armada turned to flee, Chen opened a broad-spectrum channel. To all Krathi forces, your fleet is defeated. Your leader is dead. Surrender now, and you will be treated in accordance with coalition law. Across the battlefield, Krathi ships began powering down their weapons. The war that had threatened to tear the galaxy apart had been decided in a single stunning engagement. As the coalition forces began the process of securing Krathi prisoners and assessing the damage, Chen found a moment of quiet. She stared out at the vast expanse of space, now littered with the debris of battle. You know, Krelak said, slithering up beside her, when you humans first showed up with your boxes, I never imagined it would lead to this. Chen chuckled softly. To be honest, neither did we. We just saw a problem and tried to solve it the best way we knew how, by thinking inside the box. Zixtal quipped, joining them. And outside it, Chen added with a smile, sometimes simultaneously. As they stood there, watching coalition ships begin the process of recovery and repair, Chen couldn't help but feel a sense of profound change. The galaxy had been transformed, not just by the war, but by the ideas and innovations that had won it. So, Krelax asked, her tentacles waving curiously, what do we do with Fortress Humanity now? Chen's eyes sparkled with the first hints of new possibilities. Oh, I have a few ideas. After all, why should we limit ourselves to just one? As the trio began to discuss the future, Fortress Humanity loomed behind them, a testament to the power of human ingenuity and the strength of a united galaxy. The age of containerized civilization had only just begun, and the possibilities were as infinite as the stars themselves. A new galactic order. In the cycles following the decisive battle of Fortress Humanity, the galaxy entered a period of rapid transformation. The defeat of the Krathi Empire had not only ensured the survival of the Galactic Coalition, but had also ushered in an era of unprecedented technological and social change. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood before the newly expanded Galactic Coalition Council, her eyes sweeping across the chamber. Representatives from hundreds of species filled the room, including, for the first time, a contingent of reformed Krathi. Members of the council, Chen began, her voice carrying easily through the vast chamber. Today marks not just the ratification of the Galactic Concordat, but the beginning of a new chapter in our shared history. As Chen spoke, holographic displays flickered to life around the chamber, showing images of the ongoing galactic reconstruction efforts. Swarms of containers, now as ubiquitous as stars themselves, moved between worlds, repairing damage, establishing new colonies, and knitting the fabric of interstellar society back together. The technology that helped us win the war, Chen continued, is now the foundation upon which we build our peace. The adaptability and efficiency of our container systems have allowed us to rebuild at a pace previously thought impossible. Indeed, worlds that had been ravaged by Krathi phase disruptors were already showing signs of recovery. Modular cities sprung up overnight, their components easily tailored to the needs and physiologies of dozens of different species. Trade routes that had been severed by conflict reopened, stronger and more efficient than ever. But it wasn't just the physical infrastructure of the galaxy that was changing. The very nature of galactic society was evolving, shaped by the principles of modularity and adaptability that humans had brought with them. Dr. Aisha Patel, now heading the newly established Galactic Institute of Modular Sciences, took the podium next. Our research has shown that the container principle can be applied far beyond mere logistics, she explained. We're seeing revolutions in fields as diverse as medicine, education, and even governance. Holographic displays shifted to show some of these innovations, modular hospital units that could be rapidly deployed to disaster areas, educational pods that adapted in real time to a student's learning style and physiology, even governmental systems that could reconfigure themselves to better represent the changing needs of their populations. As the presentation continued, Ambassador Zixtal leaned over to Krelax, his scales shimmering with a mix of excitement and apprehension. "It's astounding," he whispered. "In just a few short cycles, humans have reshaped our entire understanding of, well, everything." Krelax's tentacles waved in agreement. "Indeed. And to think, it all started with a simple box." The implications of container technology extended even to the remnants of the Krathi Empire. Under the supervision of the Coalition, Krathi worlds were being rebuilt using the very technology they had once sought to destroy. Former warships were repurposed into modular construction platforms, their crews learning to create rather than destroy. Lieutenant Commander Jack Harper, now a key figure in the Coalition's diplomatic corps, had been instrumental in this process. He addressed the Council next, standing alongside a Krathi representative. "The integration of Krathi society into the wider galactic community has been challenging," Harper admitted. "But the flexibility of our systems has allowed us to bridge gaps that once seemed insurmountable." The Krathi representative, still somewhat uncomfortable in the peaceful setting, chittered in agreement. "We have learned much from the humans and the Coalition. Our strength, once turned to conquest, now serves the cause of galactic unity." As the council session progressed, it became clear that the galaxy was entering a new age of exploration and discovery. With the threat of the Krathi removed and reconstruction well underway, attention was turning once more to the stars. Ambassador Chen returned to the podium for the session's conclusion. "Today, we stand at the threshold of a new era. The Galactic Concordat establishes not just peace between our peoples, but a framework for ongoing cooperation and mutual growth." She gestured to the grand view screen behind her, which now showed a massive construction project taking shape in deep space. It was unmistakably based on the design of Fortress Humanity, but on an even grander scale. "I present to you Project Nexus," Chen announced. "A joint endeavor that will serve as a mobile hub for galactic governance, scientific research, and cultural exchange. Built on the principles that saw us through our darkest hour, it represents our shared commitment to a brighter future." The council chamber erupted in applause and expressions of approval from dozens of species. As the session concluded and beings began to file out, discussing excitedly the possibilities that lay ahead, Chen found herself approached by a familiar face. Vlix, the Xenthorian xenobotanist, who had been part of the first human colonization efforts, bowed slightly in greeting. "Ambassador Chen, I hope I'm not interrupting. Chen smiled warmly. Not at all, Glix. How goes your work on Project Nexus? Fascinating beyond words, Glix replied, his scales shimmering with enthusiasm. The biodomes we're designing will be able to support hundreds of different ecosystems, all within the modular framework. It's a perfect fusion of nature and technology. As they chatted, Chen couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought them to this point. From those first uncertain days when humanity had joined the coalition, through the crucible of war, and now into this new age of possibilities. You know, Glix, Chen mused, when we first developed our container system back on Earth, we never imagined it would lead to all this. We were just trying to move goods more efficiently. Glix's head tilted in curiosity. Do you ever miss those simpler days? Chen laughed softly. Sometimes. But then I look at what we've accomplished together, at the barriers we've broken down and the future we're building, and I wouldn't change a thing. As they turned to gaze out at the stars, visible through the council chamber's vast windows, the enormity of what had been achieved, and what was yet to come, settled over them. The galaxy, once divided and war-torn, was now united in a way that would have been unimaginable just a few cycles ago. And it had all started with a simple idea, that with the right framework, anything was possible, that the most mundane of objects, a humble container, could become the building block of a civilization that spanned the stars. As new ships launched from the orbital docks of a dozen worlds, each one filled with containers carrying the hopes and dreams of countless beings, the message was clear. The age of division was over. The age of unity, modular, adaptable, and strong, had begun. In the vast tapestry of the cosmos, humanity had found its place not as conquerors or saviors, but as innovators and collaborators. They had brought to the galaxy not just a technology, but a philosophy, that the whole could be greater than the sum of its parts, that strength lay in flexibility, and that even the simplest ideas could change the course of history. As Project Nexus took shape in the distance, a symbol of this new galactic order, Ambassador Sarah Chen smiled to herself. The future, like the containers that had made it possible, was wide open, ready to be filled with the collective aspirations of a united galaxy. The story of humanity's containers was far from over. In fact, it had only just begun.